astrologer, and I'm kind of thinking about a new name for my channel because it used to be Channeling Science, and then I ran into the biases of not unexpected things, but it was like, okay, it's no longer the experiment of channeling science, and the nude astrologer was a joke, which I may or may not keep, but I'm just like I'm no longer nude, and when people are starting to watch my lives, then it is no longer relevant to try nude because there can be like mistakes with the camera and so on when you have viewers. It's a bit of a problem. So I cannot do the nude astrology without committing to way too much attention to able and willing to deliver. So if you have any ideas for this channel, other than STJ astrology or whatnot, then you are very welcome to offer it in the comments down below. And I want to talk about the new moon, the full new moon, the full moon in Aries. So I pulled up this chart from a beautiful site called Cafe Astrology. I just needed the chart, and I'm looking at it. I don't know if there's. No, I don't have a cursor option other than to play with myself. But I want to see this. Okay, so as I love doing, I'm just going to look at the chart and online tell you what I see. We're gonna have the moon in Aries. I believe it's going to be very much conjunction to Chiron, which is important, and the sun in Libra. Conjuncting Venus, and Venus is going to be invisible for this eclipse, for this full moon. So, moon opposition sun, full moon, it's going to be on the axis of Aries and Libra. So this is another Mars-Venus axis. The Mars in Aries is the, you can think about the moon as Mars ruled. So the emotions of starting something new. But this is a full moon, so it's a culmination of something. And the uses for full moon, people still manifest on a full moon. Although full moon is about the culmination of something and then letting go of something. So what to do with this full moon? Yeah, you can manifest. It's just as it's not the waning moon and it's no longer waxing. Um, so yeah, you can manifest. It's a lot about seeing things that have come to fruition. Full moons expose things that, you know, were not in the light. So think about the last new moon and what was there. Full moon is time when things are revealed. Um, Sun, okay, Sun is going to be in Libra, and Libra is Venus ruled, and Venus is invisible, which you need to take into account. And so Venus is receiving this upgrade, this recharge in the light, in the beams of the sun. So things to do that with Venus that are Venus in Libra, that are, you know, juristics, laws, laws in terms of the laws and regulations that balance society or balancing issues, certain types of aesthetics or aesthetic treatments that are meant to balance, you know, the tone of the skin, the pH levels, all those things that you balance. Are now in a situation where Venus is invisible, so they're going to be balanced in a different way. So if I put it together, the moon might reveal to us what are those things that Venus needs to upgrade the way she's doing, or the way that we need to upgrade the way that we're doing. In terms of our relationships, in terms of how we create harmony and balance in our lives, between me and my connection or connections, me and my wealth and other people's wealth, investments, all those, you know, tradings, that are also related to Libra as well, being, you know, the scale of the trade. Um, so there's a culmination of something. And you remember when I talked about the new moon in Libra, it was not the most optimistic new moon. But now we made some effort and something is coming to fruition. However, because Venus is invisible and she will only be visible in Sagittarius in December 2nd, um, whatever is culminating in this full moon, I would not, you know, bet that this is the final result. There's a culmination, but it's not anywhere near the final result because in Venus is invisible. So think about the crystal. I just put my rose quartz on the ground in a plant that is growing. I water the plant, and now my rose quartz is going through an update. She's releasing energy to the earth, and then she's taking energy from the earth and from the sun. And then the next time, December 2nd, you know, when I will wear, or when I will see, when it will be visible, when it will be on me, and then there's going to be an upgrade. There's going to be a new way to conceptualize Venusian things, and conceptualize because of Sagittarius. So this full moon is not big news. It may feel like it is big news but it's good that it conjuncts Chiron, because Chiron is what needs to be resolved. And when the moon touches Chiron, then while, you know, the other polarity, Venus, is invisible and opposing Chiron, there is this sense of things are going to be, we're to know what is needed or to tend to. Because Chiron are the things that we need to tend to. Okay? The moon conjuncting, being full and conjuncting Chiron is going to make it very visible what are the things that we need to tend to in the Aries part of our lives. Initiation, new beginnings. How do we start something new? With Jupiter being in Aries, it can be even the beliefs that we have about those new things. We're not seeing the moon making any significant aspects to anything other than the Sun and Venus, but Venus is invisible. Okay? So that invisible Venus is going to be very much informed. And again, this full moon is usually a combination, but here I see it is the value of something being exposed here is more important. It's a very strange combination to have, you know, the moon on, you know, on Chiron. Very strange, right? Maybe to trine Chiron, maybe to style Chiron. If it was something with Chiron that is culminating, but a full moon around Chiron is like, no, we're just having an emphasis of some wound, of something that it's like it's a wound that is coming to fruition, not in the sense that we are wounded, but in the maybe we are finally able to look at this Chiron thing because we have evacuated the path to tend to it. Maybe we have made the time, maybe we have made the means, maybe we have made the wealth to now tend to this Chiron wound, and this is the culmination. And the culmination is like a person who went through, I don't know, a trauma, a war, or whatnot, and then they rehabilitated their life, and they were struggling, and they were this, and they were that, and now they have an apartment, they have their own food security, they have their own time for themselves, and now they're able, you know, in this sort of retreat place, they're able to take a look at the Chiron wound, at the things that they didn't voice regarding to new beginnings, regarding to initiations, regarding to being themselves, okay, being a certain part. Um, and ye, well, because Aries is the head of the baby, some people relate it to identity. In your personal, your ascendant is identity, okay? So Aries, it's true, it's the head, it is the mindset, especially with Jupiter there. Um, Unless it's making some aspect to your ascendant or you have ascendant in Aries, then I don't see it necessarily being an issue of identity. Um, but it is an issue of mindset and identity can be close, especially when you say affirmations in the form of I am. So thinking about your I am statements, yes, that's something that's always beneficial. Um, and with Chiron there, yeah, there is the culmination of the process that you've done in 6 months ago when the new moon was in Aries, is that now you have more means to tend to your Chiron wound, preferably. However, Venus being invisible signals to us that this is not, even when you do tend to that Chiron wound, there will be an update. It's not the last word. It's not the last word. It's not, okay, I'm letting go of something. Full moons are usually, I'm letting go of something culminated and I'm letting go of something. If I want to manifest, I manifest the things that I'm letting go of. Or I'm letting go, let's say I want to manifest a house, being a house owner. So I'm letting go of all the mindset that I have regarding owning a house. Maybe I thought that owning property means a lot of hard work, or means a lot of strife, or means a lot of stress. So maybe I'm letting go of these limiting beliefs, so on and so forth. This is something good to do on a full moon, when the moon is about to be a waning moon and about to enter the phase of decrease. So decrease blocks, decrease difficulties, decrease the power of beliefs that do not serve bringing into fruition the new. Okay, when the new moon, we use it to increase something. So increase wealth, increase absorption of vitamins, increase food intake that is nourishing and healthy, and so on and so forth. Want to eat your junk food? Do it on a waning phase of the moon. But then, the Chiron thingy, it means that this is a good thing, because with the moon with Chiron on a full moon, it's like we are decreasing the wound that Chiron show us. So if the wound, the Chironic wound, had a big effect on us, we can manifest in to decrease the effect that this wound has on us, not by ignoring or repressing or not tending to it, but actually by tending to it, and by tending to it and being with it, and bringing new ideas, we can over time decrease its effect. However, because of the sun, the other polarity is Venus ruled, and Venus is invisible, it's going to be more like a think tank time where the insight is not yet there. You might actually see something good coming up in December, around December 2nd, when the Venus is going to be visible in Sagittarius. Okay? I believe that Jupiter by then will be in Pisces. So Jupiter will be at home, and going to have a very strong rulership for Venus. Will be Jupiter, and Jupiter will be in Pisces. That can be actually a magnificent, beginning or a magnificent new beginning that can touch on what happened here. It can touch even on that Chiron wound, because she will be also applying to trine Chiron. And then, okay, we had an update, the way we dealt with our Chironic wound in Aries. is receiving a huge update, and then Venus is going to be visible, trining Chiron, applying to trine Chiron, and then things are going to get better. Then we're going to get more of the tools that we need to tend to wounds, or more of the tools that we need in our life affecting us, and it's going to be less effective because we're going to have a new perspective on relationships and on how to relate even to ourselves with this wound. Okay, the Venus Chiron thingy, and you don't see Chiron here in the chart, but it's around next to the moon. The Venus Chiron thingy is basically how we relate to ourselves. This Chiron is in Aries, and Aries is the self, but do know that your ascendant in your natal chart is the self. And before I'm going to go by ascendant, let's just take a look at the, what the sky is going to look like at this time. Where is Mars? The ruler of the moon is Mars. So Mars is in Gemini, 22-degree Gemini. It will be a retrograde, I believe it will. No, it's not yet retrograde, I believe. So 22-degree Gemini. It's going to have a funny inconjunct, applying to inconjunct Pluto. And this is not a harmonious aspect. Okay, the inconjunct is a disruptive aspect. It means that there are two things that it's not easy to balance because they meet each other at such an angle. Think about the scales as 180 from each other. When the scales are balanced, then the two things are in opposition to each other. We scale one thing in opposition to another. How am I scaling one thing in conjunct to another and making them harmonize? It's more of a jazz. Okay, it's more of a jazz tempo than a 4/4 beat. And the way to make these things, the Mars and Pluto sit together is not easy. There can be sort of civil unrest because Mars is in Gemini, especially countries like, the United States is having a Pluto return. It's about to touch its final, with Pluto now turning direct, it's about to touch its final Pluto return. And Mars in Gemini is a lot of speed, but it's also civil. Mars is unrest, Mars unrest, conflict, civil conflict. And this is not just in the United States, it's a mundane chart. Okay, citizens, people, the people. It's not the Aquarius, the masses, but the communities. The small communities are now at an unrest. Okay? And this unrest is sort of like not easy to balance with the forces currently in power, the big organizations or the hierarchical organizations. So it's not exactly an opposition where you have like a civil war or you have citizens rising against the regime. It's nothing like that with this one. But it is a situation where it can be like a situation where there is an unrest, there is conflict, there is fighting, but it's not exactly, it's like you try to shoot an arrow, but you point to some weird place. But then that weird place is not like, oh, that weird place joins the war. It's like that weird place sees this as an omen for good wealth that is about to arrive. Let's say, you have, an arrow and you're shooting the arrow, or you're shooting a gun. For example, in Israel, we have Bedouin villages, and then in every wedding, they have shootings. So you could be, shooting a gun from Tel Aviv and aiming, not even knowing where you're aiming, and then, the bullet falls in Daliat El Carmel, which is an Arabic village, and then think, oh, it's a wedding, somebody, oh, Mazel Tov, somebody's getting, I don't know, Mazel Tov is in Hebrew, but somebody's getting married, somebody, it's good joy, celebration. It can be something like that. It's like the sign, the omen of Mars from Gemini is going misconstrued. Somebody is upset there at the Gemini community, and then, the the act or the intuition is like not being interpreted because it's Mercury ruled, this framing interpretation not being interpreted. And the forces of power are like, or alternatively, it could be, a certain village is having a wedding and then they are shooting, and then the forces in power thinking, oh my God, there is a terror attack in this and that village, and like it's nothing. It was a celebration. So it can be misconstrued in that way. What the words that you are aimed at one direction fall in another direction, interpreted in a third way, and then the forces in power get into the mix, and it's like big balagan, big mess. It can be very satirical. It can be a very satirical moment in the. I don't know if the history of humanity is a big saying, but it can be like a satire moment, like a Kafka story, like absurd. So all of these things together. And where is Mercury? Mercury is still in Virgo. So Mars is ruled by Mercury. The ruler of the moon is in Mercury. The ruler of the moon is in Virgo, tropically. And Mercury is going to apply to opposition Jupiter, which is yet another, adds to the absurd, because Mercury is our immediate communication, trade, business agreements, and also technology. And Jupiter is our grand philosophy. So think about the theory is Jupiter, the applied technique is Mercury. And when they opposition each other, they apply to opposition each other, then Mercury's humor, so there can be a battle of humor, some grand theory of, maybe martial arts, maybe war, maybe theories of new beginnings, of initiations, of something new. It can be made, put to ridicule, or by the great grand skill of Virgo, or dissected, or something goes there. There's this battle of oppositions between Jupiter, it's the grand theorist, the preacher, and Mercury, that's the trick. So, for example, if you're trying to manifest in this full moon using, I don't know, some, grand manifestation, Mercury may bring you something, and there is going to be a sense of humor into it. I have Mercury in the second house, and I can tell you, I've had funny things with manifestations. It's not, with Mercury opposition in Jupiter, it does square Mars, but it's not something that is. Okay, Mercury, it does trine Pluto. It does, it's leaving the trine with Pluto. So Mercury is going, it's not necessarily going to be, vile, but it does touch on, it's leaving its opposition with Pisces. It's applying to opposition Jupiter. It's leaving its trine with Pluto. So Jupiter has big ideas, but Mercury is moving quick and is very much informed. And so Mercury, it's like the person that's laughing at the religion, or at the religious, or it's kind of getting what it needs from religious people, but then moving forward. It's not to be taken too seriously. So Mercury in Virgo is at home. Virgo, think about Mercury in Virgo as the very skilled, meticulous writer. Great time for a message to go viral, okay? Because it's leaving its opposition with Neptune, but it's still a good time for a message to go viral. But it will go viral in a way where you just surrender, the interpretation. It can be like you write a song or a poem or a satire, and you mean to deliver one message, and then the message is either lost in translation, or something happened to this message. It can go viral. Neptune is at home. It is in Pisces. But people are going to read into it whatever they read into it. Okay, they're going to see themselves in it maybe where you didn't even mean to, and it can act actually in your favor. It can act in a very strange way, peculiar way, unusual way, somewhat surprising, but surprising for the nature of Mercury, not for the nature of Neptune. It can be a bit of a letdown, but it's not always lost. Absolutely not always lost. Uh, and so, yes, I've been trying to say yes. It's also leaving the trine with Pluto. Um, Mercury trine in Pluto is interesting in the square in Mars. So it's leaving the square with Mars, but it's still in effect. So Mercury square in Mars is, the word and the sword. They're at odds. Should we just, should we make a joke about it, or should that joke be, or should we, should we make a scene about it on social media, or should we actually go and make a scene about it in the street? Okay. Um, and you can think about a lot of images or framing of things or framing of the civil unrest, and that being this question: should we do it on social media, or should we do it? Should we writing about weapon, writing about the ridicule of war? And then this actually, leaving the trine with Pluto, so Mercury again is very much informed with what's going on, in higher ranks in society, in governments in society, how they work. Um, all those memes, for example, today I saw a meme about, did you know that both parties in the US work for the same corporation? Then you have this hand with the blue pill and the red pill. Those are kind of almost cliches, results of that, you know, Mercury, Pluto, Mars, Neptune, Jupiter. Molding the message, using imagery, the diffusion of Mars, because the ruler of the moon will still be applying. If it's not, has it gone retrograde? I think not. Will still be applying to square Neptune. And this is a time where Neptune dissolves the power of Mars. Or we idealize war. Okay, so idealize, actually, I was going to write a poem about the Second Amendment, about the gun. And, why is, the gun sitting lonely, isolated, is another Neptunian, and nobody calls him, or nobody sees the people who use him. And then it's being used in the wrong ways, and so on and so forth. And then this promise of a gun that is placed in the second act is shooting, and so on and so forth. So there is this poetic thought about weapon, about Mars, about action, about initiation. All in all, it rings type of a lot of satire can be written here. A lot of and the satire is like a cosmic satire. It's a misconstruing of something that carries a lot of humor, but also a lot of potent feelings. Okay, and how are they going to be expressed? And think about what are the guns, if it's United States, what are the guns supposed to do in this? The Second Amendment was like, okay, which gun can you use and so, but what are the guns supposed to do? It's protect the citizens from the governments. What are they actually doing? Hardly ever that. All the while, what is the promise of that, land of the free? Aries, freedom. Chiron there, wound around freedom, the promise of the land of the free. And well, if you're American, then you probably, understand how that relates to you. But there is also this sense of um, not necessarily loss of a fight, but kind of you try to do something or you try to initiate and it just dissolves. You try to fight something and then it just dissolves. But it is a sort of a dissolution that dissolves both parties. It's not that there is one winner and one loser. It's not that it's clear that this person is right. There is still this sort of fog around what's going on there. The Mars is trine in Saturn. It's leaving its trine with Saturn. It's a mature Mars after such a transit, and it has a maturity of the phase where, for example, it was squaring or conjuncting Saturn. Again, applying to in conjunct Pluto. So Mars here is very, Mars here is very lonely. Mars here is very lonely. It is an ideation of something. You think about the veteran that was kind of left out in the cold, that, how many homeless veterans are, for example, in your country or in the United States, and then they give them this house for 9 months, and, of course, you cannot rehabilitate in 9 months. And so the whole Kafka story or satire or ridicule, there's sort of sadness to it, sort of grieving. And then, and then you could have like a celebration for a veteran that is actually still homeless, or if there is a big celebration put out for this veteran, and now they show he lives in this tiny home, and blah, 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 and then the veteran, is being sent out again to the street or to look for the next company will give them a tiny house for 9 months. So it's like they have a big honoring celebration of that veteran, but nobody actually gives them food. Or there is the great ideation of the war, but the people who fought it are not actually being listened to. So it can be something like that. But Mars is informed. Mars is ready for this. He's not. It is trining a sun that is Venus ruled, and Venus is invisible. Think about the humor, okay? It's leaving a trine with the sun that is in Libra. Where is the ruler? Venus. Venus is invisible. So there is this big celebration of that is quite, there is this sense of emptiness, and with Chiron in there, it's like, it's kind of like, it's not even a Pyrrhus wind. It's kind of like really, ridiculous and funny stuff that are just like spiritually surrendering, that Mars, and it's definitely being exposed to the limitations of war, to the limitations of a fight. There is the promise of a war, and then there is the limitations of what you can do with the war. So if you talk about, for example, certain wars that are actual wars that are happening, and Chiron in Aries is also the wound around war. So you had, Ukraine in business relations with China, Ukraine being the Chinese of China, creating the EV electricity, the electricity for EV cars, and then electric cars just stopped for like a year and a half, stopped producing, Geely stopped producing, and all of these things that now they want to bring back. And then Russia being in this funny story where, if you are an empire and you have a small country making business with another big empire, You want the land of that small country, under your occupation. Because otherwise you can bring, China can do with this land a lot of things. Maybe nothing, maybe something, maybe they have a secret agreement, maybe they don't have a secret agreement. So all of these things that are like ages old are you know, suddenly being brought about. So there is this, what is the right thing to do? Fighting, is Putin threatening the freedom of Ukraine, or does China? What if China stops doing business with Ukraine and goes to another country? Then Ukraine has to fight with this, Putin, and find whom to do business with, which eventually can be Putin. And so this whole battle for freedom, or this whole initiation, or this whole war thing is like the ridicule of war. The limit of the potential of war and being warriors to deliver freedom. Oh, this is a big one with Chiron. With Chiron in Aries, we are exposed to the limitations of how much, the battle for freedom, how much freedom is achieved by battle and war and winning, or even innovation and starting something new, and how much by diplomacy, and what kind of diplomacy, how should diplomacy look like, and so on and so forth. So the fight for freedom fails to deliver. Or the ideation of we're going to liberate our country is failing to deliver. So this is it's not a good time for war, and it's not a good time for peace. In that kind of field. Other things we have here. Well, yeah, the sun is applying to trine Uranus. Can live in a trine. Venus, invisible Venus, is trine in the North Node, which will be activated with the eclipse, but the sun is trining Uranus. And so here we have another funny thing, because a trine between Uranus and the sun is a promised land. Okay, and especially with the North Node and Venus, and Uranus is Venus ruled, and Venus is next by the Sun. So this is maybe a hidden gift. It can be a hidden gift. But then there's something about the delivery. There's a potential to revolt. There is a potential to, but how do you revolt? Who do you revolt? Okay, how do you change? How do you make something, a lot of foggy and confusion, and then the sun is applying to trine Saturn. So there's a promise of giving structure to that revolt, but now we have this, 90 degrees aspect between Saturn and Uranus that is not going to perfect. So there's almost a conflict. There's almost that final revolt in Saturn, but it's not perfecting. It's like we are almost going into another revolution, but then we take a step back. And then, Saturn is going to head towards Pisces, and so Uranus is going to slowly head towards Gemini, and Saturn is faster than Uranus, and so we're not going to have. So it's kind of like it's kind of like two. If you go to two parties, it's kind of like a couple of parties are having a fight, a conflict, a war, and then the conflicting voices, and so, and then there is the revolutionary and this and that, and then you expect this to have a big, culmination, but the culmination is that there is no culmination. This is almost frighteningly like those, like Waiting for Godot. Like this is a chart where waiting for Godot could be written. Um, all those things that everybody has something to say, but suddenly doesn't mean anything. So it is this funny comedy tragedy that you're engaged in, but in a very peculiar way. Um, what can I say? It's a weird one. The new moon was weird. The full moon is not promising. It's the culmination of no culmination. It's really like the ending of waiting for the Godot. We're still waiting. Have you read the introduction to the phenomenology of I don't remember what? And read, for me it was my experience. I read the entire book. It reminds me a bit of the literature that was written back then. I read the entire introduction waiting for the actual book, but then I was like, oh, that was the book. The introduction was the book. And it's those kind of weird logics, those pointless points, those things that I see in there. And it's like something that had a promise, like a story that had a promising plot, and then it dissolves in the air, and you almost think something is going to happen, and then nothing happens, and it has its pros and cons, and very, very, very weird. And no, it's like you're going to a court case, but the two parties are not even sure that they are like, oh, is this the person? No, I was suing another person. This is not the person that I was suing. And the person that was sued is like, I know this guy. I know you. I know you. And his lawyer tell him to shut up, to shut up. And the judges are like, what are we going to do with this data? It's like, this person doesn't know the person that is being sued, and the person being sued is like, I know, oh, I remember you from there. I remember you from, the grocery store. I remember you from there. And the lawyers of, representing the person being sued is like, oh, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. You're gonna, just like they don't know what they're doing, and then but nothing. It's like nothing really happens with that. And then the judges go, oh, well, yes, you had this, to the person who's suing, it was like, you had this report that you need to pay here and there. And the person's, and then, maybe the person being sued is like, you know what, I can pay, I can help you with that. And then it's kind of like these weird stories with no real conclusion, with no real point. And the point is that you thought that there was going to be a point to that. But there isn't really. So, all in all, very good for the kind of, if you want to write a kind of story, or a kind of, or to read a kind of story where there is not really a point, where this is absurd, where this is not even satire, because satire has a point. That is absurd, that is a certain sort of confusion, that is abstract, then, you can read such arts, you can write such arts, but other than that, it's like the symbolism of, two fighting, but then Venus is the ruler of one is invisible, and the ruler of the other is, with Chiron. It's like a story about two superheroes where one cannot point his gun correctly, and the other, was wounded, so he cannot do his martial arts correctly, and so they are just, well, you want to have a cup of coffee? Well, let's just have a cup of coffee, and then the coffee is running out, so they're having, a cup of juice, and then they're not sure they're allergic to it. So they say, okay, then let's sit on the bench, and people think they're homeless or something. Something really like that. Um, okay, I want now saying all that. I wonder if there is a point to do a sign by sign. Because let's say if you're Aries in this weird comedy, then if you're Ascendant Aries, and especially in the middle decan, so you can, the culmination of this full moon can be for you this sense of the dissolution of the Chiron wound. But it's a dissolution where you got that there was no point to, or maybe there was something that was important to you about your identity, and you're like exposing that, and then nobody really listens, nobody really cares, and it's like, you know, think about a, let's say, gay person coming out to the. I saw actually a video of, there's this shorts by this girl that does her Asian mom, and she's coming out to her Asian mom, and she says, "Mama, I don't know, like, don't know how to tell this. I'm a lesbian." She said, "Okay." Does she? Oh, I have a girlfriend. You say, "Okay." Does she eat spicy food? So it can be something like that. Like, okay, what you think is going to be the point is not even the point, and then you're like, it's ignored. It's like, does she eat spicy food? You know? She's like, yeah, okay. And it's not even becoming a conflict. You think that something is going to become conflictual, and you say, I'm going to gather the strength to do that, and it's like, okay. Mama, I'm gay. Uh-huh. Okay. You know? So it can be something relative to your identity. And that you thought was, you know, this wounding, this, or something that is, you're being exposed to this, or this wound is being exposed, and but then it kind of dissolves because the ruler of this wound is Mars, and Mars is like in this place that is weird. So you're not having a triumph over your wound, nor are you having a defeat. You're just like, oh, this thing that I was worried about is like, nobody freaking cares. Really? Nobody freaking cares? Um, but that's about that. Or it can be that you finally, because the opposition to Venus, or you finally have the date of your dreams, and you're dating this person that you were idealizing, or this woman that you were idealizing, and then you see, you know, she picks her nose, or she farts, or she this, or she that, and it's like, this is another just a human being. Um, you're like, oh, I was dreaming about seeing this person. Will they like me? And you know, they're like, they think you're okay. um, so, so that may be, or you kind of try to, you know, initiate something, or initiate, let's say you try to have a pitch to this great company, and so and so and so. You think, you try to plan your way of going. I'm going to go through this, and I'm going to say hello, and I'm going to make the security person like me, and then I'm going to go there, and then I'm going to go there, and you enter the building, and the security person is just eating food, and they're like, come in, come in, come in. And then you enter, and then you see, you know, the CEO, and you're so excited, and you, I don't know, tell them about your idea, and it's like, man, this is a very good idea. This is a very good. But right now, you know, the markets, they're not like, yeah, but leave your offer here, and but these are actually, it's like not necessarily anything is going to happen with there. So you thought, I'll never get to speak with this person. You speak with that person, they're just, I don't know, you blowing their nose in this very vocal way, and kind of tell him, look at your idea. I'm like, yeah, this is a very good idea. Leave it here, leave it here. And you're like, you're going to do this? Like, yeah, no, the markets right now, they're not going to do that, and they're not going to steal necessarily your idea, and they're not going to do it. It's just nothing's going to culminate. And so you can have this weird experience with your life path, weird experience with your identity, with your personality, with your approach, with how you show up in the world, but also don't forget this isn't the axis is with the seven, so also the people you're seeing. Okay, you're receiving this great gift from someone, and the gift is a bit torn and a bit, something is fractured or something like that. Uh, Ascendant in Taurus. So here you can have a situation where, for reasons that are beyond your control, a certain type of revolution, a certain revolutionary initiation by you, or a certain type of, or maybe because it's your ascendant, maybe what you think is provocative about you is not being perceived as provocative um, for certain reasons that are unbeknownst to you. Yeah, the moon in your 12th house, or something that was bothering your soul kind of finds its way of dissolution rather than resolution. And you don't know if to be happy about it or not happy. There's this numbness around this thing. Um, it can be something also, relating to finances, or that you've defined yourselves in certain ways and now you've changed that and you think that this is going to be like a big news, and nobody, yeah, it's like there was a potential there, but it's not really performing right now. With the ascendant in Gemini, so this whole thing is happening in your 11th and 5th house, so that can pertain even to your children, um, or children versus society or goals or colleagues or whatnot. You can go to a conference and then some child does something that maybe you think is embarrassing, or your colleagues think it's embarrassing, and then it's not embarrassing, or it's not a big deal, or a child exposes something, or colleagues expose something that actually concern your children or your pleasures, or you may have an idea. You go to a conference and you have been presenting things. Those of you who go to conferences, don't be scared, okay? It's nothing much. But maybe you have been presenting things and using analogies or examples from your leisure time or with your children, and the pictures come a bit not so beautiful because Venus is not performing well, being invisible, or you were thinking that, oh, the pictures are going to make the deal and they look beautiful, but to other people it's like, what's the connection they're bringing the family, and this is I don't know, a scientific article. Or you thought something was groundbreaking, and it's like, it's okay. So there can be something about that, with ascendant in Cancer. So this whole thing is happening in your 10th house and 4th house. So you will experience those areas of your life as areas where what you were worried about in maybe your relation to work-life balance is not something you need to worry about, because you don't really have work and you don't really have something at home to be concerned about. Okay, and maybe that is the wound. It's like, oh, you don't have to worry about work-life balance because you don't have work and your life needs an update. That can be a sort of a situation. Ascendant Leo. This is happening in your 9th and 3rd house. So maybe you were planning on a vacation and it comes about halfway. This is the least of the concerning ones, actually. Or you're expecting to feel a certain way in your upcoming vacation, or something to do with studies, and you're not, as long as it's not the new beginning of something big, it's just going to be like there's something is a bit off. Or you go to the retreat and you go to this vacation and then you have to deal with your Chiron wound. Um, and you not only have to deal with your Chiron, you were expecting to have just nice time, but now a wound from the past is coming, but there is still no resolution to it because Venus is invisible and Mars is like not really performing well. Um, or you think I'm going to do something about it, I'm going to make an action about it, and then that action goes misconstrued. With Ascendant Virgo, this is your second and eighth house. Don't hold your horses when it comes to investments. Spending money, dedicating money, selling out. Maybe you thought I'm going to buy with the new moon and sell with the full moon, and you're doing that and you're performing okay, you're doing everything the way you were supposed to be doing, but you missed the peak. Okay, and you're selling out, and then later it's actually performing well, or you're selling out, or you don't have someone to sell out to, and you have to hold on to the stock. And your wealth is like, or a sense of self value, or your resources versus another person's resources. There's something um, that you find out that right now you can tend to. Maybe you were doing all of these wealth practices and kind of manifesting wealth and manifesting this and taking care of your relationships with money and your relationship to yourself and doing all the good work and the balancing and so on and so forth. But now it's kind of like a stagnant phase. It's like you were doing everything okay, but it's still and with Mercury in your first house, then your messages, what you project to the world can go viral on the one hand, or can go unnoticed, or can be misconstrued or misunderstood. But again, it all passes. It's not something that's going to have necessarily a big imprint on your life. If you know this, if you're aware of this, then you can just let it be. It's very good. This whole thing is very good to anybody who has been climbing an overly high tree. This sort of fog and dissolutions where people can, climb off the trees they climbed on, if they're having a conflict or argument. Ascendant Libra. So the ruler of your ascendant is invisible until the 2nd of December. You might feel that the usual shine and glow that you have in the world, if your ascendant is well aspected, usually is kind of receiving a dim. You kind of dim. And maybe there are things you're planning for this full moon, and you're supposed to be the light of the party, but there's just something about it. Or you had this, you were buying this new makeup and you thought it was going to really shine, and it's matte. Thought it was going to be glitter, and it's matte. And you put on the glitter and it looks like grease, and you're like, this is annoying. But this is your first and seventh house, so it can be like, planning a date with your partner, and you think, I'm going to be shining, I'm going to be glowing, and Venus is like, no, you're not. And there can be a wound around that relation that you need to tend to, and but you don't really know what to do about that, or you've established a certain relationship, and now you're committed or in living together or whatnot, and something comes up and needs to be tended to in that seventh house. And the moon shows you exactly what it is, but it doesn't show you exactly how to deal with that. Or you think that I'm going to deal with it with communication, but the communication is foggy. Okay, why communication? The ruler of the moon is Mars. Mars is in Gemini. I'm going to deal with communication, but the communication is foggy. Or I have this thing to say, I have this argument to make, we are going to be or have a harsh thing to say to my partner, and then, they either just accept it or don't really understand what you want, or the message is misconstrued. So this is not a good time to define anything, to make big decisions. It can be that you think your significant other is lying to you and they just don't understand what you're saying. This is actually could be a situation where you think you're being gaslighted, but it's not on purpose. And this is something that can happen. Maybe you had a relationship where you were gaslighting, it was not on purpose, or because it's Libra. If you're more prone to thinking, oh, this person is doing that, this person is doing that, and you may find out, or it may be that it's not the case, but you don't see it. But if you are tending to be naive and to believe, it can be that you are being gaslighted and you don't see that, and that is the wound in your seventh house. That you think, oh, they are okay, they are this, they are that, and it seems okay, but they are being misconstrued in a way that they sound like they are okay, but they are actually not. Again, it can work in two ways because it's Libra. So those are the things that can happen. Ascendant Scorpio. So Ascendant Scorpio, again, one of the ascendants that are approaching the eclipse energies. This is happening in your 6th and 12th house. So you could be discovering something that you need to treat in your body, or in your work, or even with the help of your pet or your pet. And maybe it's something that is body-mind related because of the 12th, 6th axis, but you don't quite know to diagnose, and you try to treat it and it comes out the wrong way. It can be like a beauty procedure, or you try to do a beauty procedure even, but or like you had something in your nose and you need to do surgery, so you say, oh, okay, I'll do a nose job, and then the nose job kind of like comes out, and then it didn't really solve the problem, or it did solve the problem, but just something that the action that you're trying to take in your health-related matters, or the service that you give to others, or having employees. Maybe you're the boss and you're trying to, or maybe you're trying to govern your pet, and your pet is like not really listening, or maybe you went to an agility competition and they're usually performing well, but this time, not happening. In the 12th house, again, you may be exposed to a situation where something in your relationship is affecting your mental health, or just you're being aware of the importance of Venus in your life, or Venus figures in your life, or yin in your life, or anything yin related, Venus related. You're being exposed to it by the absence of the rays of Venus from the cosmos. And then the action that you might attempt to take relative to these things is premature. So it's not yet time to take action. You still need, but then it can be dissolving in a way that's just nobody talks about this anymore. Okay, like the peace agreements between Israel and Palestine. Yeah, it can be like something like that. Ascendant Sagittarius. So this is happening in your 11th and 5th. So your 11th house, now the sun is there, but the ruler of the sun is not here. So there's, the topic of relationships, the topic of your life goals, of your colleagues, of your acquaintances. Something, the sun shines a light there, but the ruler is not well aspected. It's not something you can do about it. It's not something you can fix immediately. When Venus will be visible in your sign, then you might be the person who is going to bring about the changes, but now you're just being exposed to things that are happening there, that may affect your children, that may affect your leisure time, that may affect what you do for fun, that may affect the risks and gambles that you take in life, but it is not yet time for corrections. Ascendant Capricorn. So this thing is happening again in your 4th and 10th house. Okay. It might be that you were manifesting trying to renovate the house, but it didn't come out so beautifully. And it's not the time to fix it. It's just gonna stay like that. It's just gonna stay like that. Okay? Your image, you might be exposed to how you are being seen by others, but it's not yet time, or the action that you try to take to fix it is not really creating any difference. Okay, it might be your image or somebody, your boss, your relationship with your boss, or you try to fix your relationship with your boss, but your efforts are being misconstrued. It doesn't mean that it's been negated. It's not something that's necessarily going to be about like you try to do something good and you're being scolded for it. That's not what I see. Not even with the applying square to with the square. No, it's Mercury is leaving the square, so it's not what I see. But it is something that's not going to bear fruits. Your attempts to fix your image, to fix your relationships with your maternal, fatherly figures or bosses is just not. It's just not going to do the job. But you are exposed to something that needs to be changed there. That when Venus is going to be visible. Things can turn out in a better way. When Mars is going to be a better aspect, that things can turn out in a better way. Ascendant Aquarius. So this thing is happening in your 3rd and 9th house. And it can be with 3rd, it can be siblings, of course, that you're exposed, or maybe your sibling is tending to some wound or something that they need to pay attention to, but it's not yet time to fix it. Or you went on a vacation, or or you had high hopes relative to something that you're studying, and at least currently it's not bearing the fruit, or you were expecting. Maybe you went to a luxurious hotel or luxurious vacation that you were waiting for, and now Venus is invisible, so you went on a luxurious occasion, but you see that there is maybe a bit mold here, or maybe it's not so great looking, or the renovations since COVID did not take their place, so you can be a bit disappointed, but it's not necessarily something major. It's not, it's just, okay, it didn't wear out the best way. Ascendant Pisces, last but not least. So this is happening in your 2nd and 8th house. 2nd house, again, your wealth. If you try to do something about your wealth, this is not the time to do that. There's something culminating, something happening. But it's not, you might realize what it is that is keeping you from going the next level in terms of your wealth or building up a skill, but your efforts to fix it are, it dissolves. So this is not the time, to write that recommendation letter. It's not the time to apply for something relative to increasing your wealth. And in your 8th house, again, the ruler Venus is invisible, so it means that what you receive from this place might not carry the big value of Venus. So it can be a bit of a wounded Venus. It doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. For those who were with me on the live yesterday, I spoke about how I was trying to do the old roles of Venus, and I burned, the toasts that I was preparing. I was trying to prepare a garlic bread and I burned it. It was like this, the most simple thing in the world, but I was recording a vlog at Venus for me is the third house for an hour. And of course I burned my toast. But then somebody, an older man, it's opposition in Saturn in the ninth house, an older man came to give me a bread that is of a tradition, challah, of a tradition of the Jews that they eat on Friday, and then those challahs were not sold because they were not looking the best. And it was a minor thing, but they were not looking the best, and so I could eat them. They were not that nourishing bread that I wanted, but there was something with the food. I got the food, but it was not like the beautiful food or nothing, but it was a good surprise for me because I burned my, I tried to do the old role of Venus, the old gender role of a woman in the kitchen and so on. I burned it. Why? Because I was doing the new role of having a vlog about, Venus invisibility. So for you, it can be something like that, where, that thing that you try to bring about is not really yielding results. But then when Venus is going to be, on December 2nd, Venus is going to be visible in Sagittarius, so new concepts, new theories are going to come about, and then she's going to go to Capricorn, and those changes in the organizations, and so like the new version of Venus. So right now you're very much aware of something that needs to be fixed, but it's not much you can do about it, and the help that you receive is somehow it's good, it's better than nothing, but let's say if you're trying, it's also food, let's say if you're trying to cut gluten, and then, I got like a donation of many, many breads, and, so it's very good because right now wheat is more expensive and so on and so forth. I was trying to cut on gluten, but I'm very happy that I had food because it's kind of like those kind of things. Not a big problem. It's just know that you're aware of the problem, but you're not aware of the solution. And in your eighth house, this topic is shining in your life, but it's shining the things that need to be fixed are shining, but yet the fixing is not yet available. And it is a time where, you deal with things as they are, and you try to do the best with things as they are. And there's not much you can do. There's not much you can do to change the situation. It's just surrender it. So that was full moon in Aries. An interesting time. I find it quite peculiar. The big news is that there are no big news, and sometimes this is big news. And yes, anything Chiron related in Aries will be brought to the forefront without necessarily being able to fix it. So being able to sit with something that you're not able to fix just yet is the potential power that you need to use. This is the superpower that you need to use with this. To be able to observe without interfering. That can be. Although you might have to interfere and it will not necessarily bear, the best fruits. So this is for this full moon in Aries. I have no idea if you were watching or if anybody was watching. I'll find out later. And I'm Tali Shir on Twitter, Shirley Youngblood on Instagram. I do readings. And we had on Twitter another conversation. They keep coming, a conversation about synastries, but they come about not on the merit of a synastry, but more on the topics and the problems with synastries. So, my say is that if you have, Sun in Libra, you have relationship questions, turn to your chart. It's much better to book a reading about your relationships in your natal chart and what do they relate to. Try to diagnose that and give you solutions for you. This in itself is recovering if you tend to be more dependent on the other or dependent on the partner to be something. So yeah, I'm not saying I don't do synastries, but this usually does take two to turn to me, or there would need to be a significant reason for me to enter into a synastry situation, to me giving you synastry reading. It's a good reading to learn for yourself. For example, if you attracted someone at this time, then you already know that this is the time. You know, already know that if you start any relationship in this full moon, it might not bear the results or bear the fruits. And when Venus is going to be visible, you might be able to attract a better partner or whatnot. Not a better partner, a better partner for you or better relationship, or it could be you're great, they're great, you're just not meeting each other at the right time and space. Um, and another thing I can think of, yeah, if you are drawing someone in and that the centering seem to be an issue, or you're just curious, then and you have their chart, then you know, when I do spirit of matter, I often think of synastry. Like I'm like, why am I doing an episode on this artist? Why am I doing an episode on that musician, on that thinker? And then I try to see where does my chart meet their chart. This is nice, this is good, it's something you can learn to do for yourself. You don't need me for that. But if you're, you know, I don't think it is healthy that you're going to actually pay me, you know, my $50 or whatnot, which is a significant amount for many, to give you a synastry reading instead of focusing on your natal chart, especially if it is our first reading. There was one case in my whole, you know, entire career where I did focus on synastries and mainly composite. It was not synastries, um, because there was something that we were trying to sort with the relationship partner of the person, and that was the way to see if we are getting any progress, or we're trying to create like a history of something. But that was like, you know, when all of the outer planets are involved in altering your relationship fate, then yes, it is not just you. Um, but that was, you know, only one case in my entire career. Usually, your chart is going to be way more than enough, and you're going to center based on your chart. And it's always nice to do synastries and composites. It's always nice. Composite, I think, is more important than a synastry because it tells you like what are you two making together, and this is not something that just looking at your chart is sufficient for. Um, if you have like a Saturn moon affliction in the composite, is something that you're going to get into commitment, and then you're not going to see it, and then when you see it, it's already like the sometimes sorting this out is not necessarily very. This is one of the situations where, depending on other things, sometimes dissolving the connection might be more emotionally nourishing for for the partners, because this is a time where you can get into connection with the person, and then that comes out, and there's emotional coldness between couples, and but it does depend on so many factors, um, that, you know, get to know yourself, get to know your chart. Then you say you're dating someone new, then you want, you know, to see what are you drawing, how are you drawing, look at the synastry, do a fun reading. Okay, I do that. And usually if you got the birth date of the other person and the time, then and they know about the reading, I don't find it to be a problem. Um, if you talk about something more financial, it's still going to be on the level of your relationship with finances, the things you need to pay attention to. It's not going to be like you need to invest in this, you need to invest in that. Um, Simply because I don't know if I can trust you to understand my title as it is, and not think that if I told you something like, oh, you have, you know, like me, Mercury in the second house, so technology, and it rules your seventh and fourth, so, you know, something to do with communication, agreements, trade. Aries is also house of innovation, so new coins, new stocks, new things. Some speculative stuff can be something that you can enjoy doing if you don't overdo it. But if I told you this and you say, oh, this astrologer told me that and that and that and that and that, and I forgot to computate the factor and the heavens did their job, and you're like, oh, but they told me that and that and that. So if I can't trust you on this, then I'm not going to give you that reading. Um, so yeah, mainly looking at your chart, I do um, more like perfection years reading than solar returns. Not that I don't appreciate solar returns, it's just that I haven't perfected that to offering a solar return chart reading. It's something that I will look at, but what's more important to me is your perfected year, the Time Lords, what are they doing, what is going to be emphasized in your natal chart. Um, that's about it. I don't currently offer electional. I'm not good enough at that. Horary, the same. There's some good people for horary. If Angelita does readings, then she's probably the go-to person for horary. Electional, I know Kyra does that. I know Peter does that. Definitely Lisa, if she's still available for readings. So you have, people to turn to on those. I'm more for like looking at your chart, the big things, okay, the big things. Whether it's what's this year, whether it's overall themes in your chart, the big picture. I'm ruled by Jupiter. It's not a small thing. It's a small product, but my personal path is Jupiter, and my ascendant is my midheaven is in Sagittarius. So I'm not the person that you can expect to give you this particular election do this and this particular election do that and that. No, no. Um, Unless it's something like very big, and then I would need to perfect a skill for that. So it's big picture thing, your philosophies, your overall philosophies, big ninth house readings as well can be, dreams and goals readings as well. I do provide good professional consultation for people who are very willing to look at the cold, hard facts of things. Again, my Jupiter is in Capricorn, it's Saturn ruled. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And I am quite good at noticing the patterns that are in you, the patterns in relationships that are in you, and also to tell you if something is just a transit. For example, if you have Neptune going through, your seventh house for 14 years, and you say, oh, in the past 5 relationships, I had that and that, and I look at your chart, and I don't see anything significant other than that regarding Neptune, then I will tell you, darling, this is, when Neptune is going to hit Aries, then you're going to have some other issues, but that fog will be a lot more clear for you, and it may be that you are doing the right things, but it's not you. Sometimes it's not you, and I'm able to tell you that. So, yes. That's all I gotta say. I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye.